Thank you for viewing this recording of Using Microsoft Teams for Virtual Learning by Joe Cook and hosted by L&D Philly. Before starting the presentation, would like to make a technical note that this recording is not the standard recording that comes from Microsoft Teams. As a result of a technical issue on the L&D Philly license, we were unable to record using the native recording feature and thus did a screen record. Unfortunately, that means that there are some pop-ups on the screen that might not ordinarily be there, as well as some of the beeps that happen when chat goes on within Teams. Please excuse the technical difficulties and watch the recording for the great information that Joe shares throughout. And thank you for being a part of the L&D Philly community. Without further ado, let's start the recording. So, welcome everybody to our June first lunch and learn of June. My name's Josh Maley from the president of L&D Philly. Excited to welcome everybody here. Again, some familiar faces, some new ones. And excited about this because there's been a lot of chatter among people I know about using Teams, and I use it more now for work, but not as much for presenting. And that there are some definitely some things out there that would benefit us all. And so I thought, who could I call upon? And so Joe Cook, who is with us to lead the discussion today. This is a return trip to L&D Philly because you did one for us. I think it's been a couple of years at this point. But one nice thing is when we reach out to people in our network to do these presentations is it's nice to find people who are actual experts in this. And so there's been a lot of people in the last couple of years who have suddenly proclaimed themselves experts in virtual delivery and things and in those topics. And then there's people like Joe who have been doing it since before the pandemic, who had that experience and now is that much further ahead of the curve than, I'll say, all of us, including myself. We had some interesting tech challenges and setup today. And so with that, I've learned some Teams things already and looking forward to learn more from Joe. Real quick, just for brief announcements for the organization, and then I will turn it back to Joe for what you're all here for. You all are registered for this, which means you've been on our website. So I encourage you to go to ldphilly.com, check out what we have coming up. Specifically, this is the first lunch and learn we've done in a long time, but we have 3 others scheduled starting next week that are going to be a series of TED Talk discussions. So think book club without having to read the book. And I welcome you all to check that out. We'll be streaming the TED Talk live, so no prep necessary. Just show up. You get to meet some new people, have some conversations, and that's our latest, greatest initiative. So check that out. Again, we've got a bunch of other events, but you can read the website for that. So again, back to what I was saying with my intro piece here. Joe is an expert in this topic and has a background in instructional design, virtual delivery, virtual production. I'm getting this all right, and also is coming to us from across the pond, as it were, from outside of London. So thank you again for making this. The timing worked out well with this too, because it's past tea time, but pre-dinner time, I'm guessing, and for the rest of us, the East Coast lunch, and we probably have some people who across the country, it might be a little bit different timing. But with that, I'm going to hand it over to Joe so we can all learn about how to be more effective and create, and get the title right, and creative in what we're doing with Microsoft Teams. So thank you, Joe.
Well, thank you, Josh, for asking me back. It's lovely to be here, everyone, and recognise some faces. There's some new faces, which is very, very lovely. So we are looking at Teams for virtual delivery. Hopefully we'll get a little bit creative with it as well. As Josh said, I've got a background in L&D 25 years now, which is rather scary. And I've worked for really large companies like CNN News, but also small companies, further and higher education, charity sector. So lots of different things. And as Josh said, I've been doing this for 10 years now. The last 10 years, we've been running Lightbulb Moment, where we focus specifically on virtual classroom webinars, anything live online learning. So we train teams of people to design and deliver really great live online events. Also with us today is Mike. He's the Business Operations Manager here at Lightbulb Moment. He is in chat. He is here to support you, find links, basically do my bidding. He's also my brother. He's my producer on our sessions. So he will be a very, very useful person to have. Now, thinking about things like webcams, some of you have got your webcams on, which is delightful. I love you having your webcams on. But there is absolutely no expectation that you do. And if you want to switch them on and off as you go throughout today, especially if it's early or lunchtime or you're eating your sandwiches, then absolutely fine, you can turn those off. So we will also discuss webcam usage today as well. Now, a really great way to get involved is the hand up icon or the raise hand icon. That tells me, hey, Joe, I've got a comment or a question and I would like to unmute and have a chat. So what you can do is click that anytime you want. Let's have a practice on that, please. So go and click that raise icon. It's probably at the top of your screen. If you're on a web browser, it might be towards the bottom of your screen. There's all sorts of different licenses and different ways of running Teams. So go and have a click on that now if you can. And then if you think, someone else asked my question, you can click that same button again and your hand goes down. So please click on that. I promise you I'll see it. And the whole thing is having a producer is if I miss it, my producer will see it and will tell me. So please click that hand down. And that's great for letting me know you'd like to get involved on the audio. Another great way to get involved is on the chat. So please make sure you've got your chat panel open. Again, look at the top of your screen, maybe at the bottom if you're on the browser. Click on that little chat speech bubble. And what you should be able to see then is Joanne saying, Teams is already frustrating me. I can't see my own video, but also Mike is sharing some stuff in chat as well. This is great for questions, for comments, for sharing ideas amongst yourselves as well. So let's jump straight in with chat and do kind of exactly what it says on the tin, which is use it and see what you think of Teams. So Joanne has actually started us off already by telling us that Teams is frustrating her. So good or bad? In chat, please, what do you already know about Teams for virtual sessions? So we're thinking more specifically about virtual classrooms, not so much about the kind of the meetings and collaboration stuff, but all of it kind of comes together quite nicely. So let's use that chat window, please. And have a look in there and have a type. And if you can't type in there for some reason, feel free to click that hand up and we'll get you unmuted. So just in case you can't use that. So sometimes if you're joining on a browser as a guest to a Teams meeting, sometimes you can't use that. But most of you are using it absolutely brilliantly. So let's have a look at what you're saying. What do we know about Teams already? There are breakout rooms. Yes, there are. Although it's relatively new, only about a year and a half it's had breakout rooms. We've got whiteboard. Oh, another interesting one we'll come back to later. It has got polling. You're absolutely right. Some of the things with Teams, though, is you do have to have bits switched on. So Teams is actually part of the whole of like integrated into kind of other Microsoft stuff. It's this unwieldy beast. So it's not like Zoom where it's just, oh, I log into my account, switch this on and off and we're good to go. Often there's a lot of back end stuff that needs doing. So you might say I've got polling, but then somebody else says, well, I haven't got access to polling. So there's quite a lot of individual differences you'll see between people's accounts. Michelle says, actually, I don't know much. I'm excited to learn. I'm excited you're here, Michelle. Angel says, we use Teams at our workplace. I've been able to add polls and do basic navigation. I haven't done much with breakouts. And Angel, it's brilliant that you're exploring that already. And if you haven't needed to use Teams breakouts or other kind of features, anybody, then that's okay. There's a fine line between, oh, flashy tech, we must go and click on everything. And let's keep it simple and where we're comfortable and what we're doing. A middle ground in there is good. Other things, we've used breakout rooms. You can record sessions depending upon how your license is set up. That is true. Christopher says, we've got used to it and it's good. Our learners already know their way around. Also, the good is that's the case. The bad is you can't tell who's on a desktop app version or a web version. Great point, Christopher. So then if somebody says, I can't see that, or it doesn't work, or the whiteboard doesn't work, or whatever it is, it can be hard to troubleshoot that. Whereas other systems, you get more of an idea about that. Joanne says access to begin with. If all your participants are not in your organisation, that can be a challenge, Joanne. Usually for the live meeting part of it, which is what we've got now, people should be able to access the meeting part, but can they access chat? Does the whiteboard work for them and so on? But can you share files like you can in the bigger Teams application? That's all the extra stuff you usually only get if you're part of the organisation. Shannon says it's similar to Zoom or Google as a meeting platform. Yet they all have a lot of similarities. Bob says we've only been using Teams since the lockdown and continue using it for some classes and looking to learn more. You're in the right place. Alan says it's a loop tool and integrated apps make sessions more interactive. Love that, Alan, because if you are within an organisation, if you're doing internal training, then you can absolutely use things like the SharePoint or OneDrive access, and you can collaborate on Word documents or PowerPoint documents or whatever it might be. And there's a lot of technology you can do there. And so we need things like closed captions, tools we need to get more comfortable with. It plays nicely with other Microsoft products. It does. It's improved in the last year or so, says Tracy. It absolutely has. And there's more coming. It's continuously developing, as all the platforms are actually at the moment. Pre-COVID, it was like a once a year, sometimes once a decade, depending on the platform. But now it feels like every day there's an update somewhere, which is kind of good in development, kind of challenging to keep up with. And Christopher says you have to reset the room every time, even if you present in the same session all the time. Yeah, the only platform really that has the static rooms that are set up and ready to go is Adobe Connect, which is a whole other kind of beast, but it's got those things set up ready for you to use all the time, which is lovely, especially with more complicated sessions. So you guys know quite a lot already. What we're going to cover in this session, we're going to talk a little bit about emojis and how we might use those differently in Teams, webcam and privacy, a couple of the meeting options, some of the stuff about panels and how the hand up icon works, screen sharing to ensure that we've got interactivity, and some stuff about whiteboards that's specific to Teams, and a short amount of reflection and Q&A right at the end. So we are going to start with a little bit of fun, which is emojis. Now, hopefully, depending on how you're attending today, if you look at the chat panel, you should be able to see a little smiley face. And from there, you can go and click on one of the icons and set that up in chat. So we are looking in the chat panel and at the bottom of the chat panel. So if you can go and use that, please do. And if you can't, so yours is disabled, Alan. Mike's been able to share a light bulb, which is very on brand. Thank you, Mike. El Rotondo has shared an upside smiley face. So we do have some people with it, some people not with it. And this goes back to that point about versions and are people on an app, are they in a browser and so on. So we do have that as an option. It can be a little bit fun, but Joanne, who's put a sad face, you can use the old-fashioned way of doing it too. We get the message, Joanne. What's also quite nice, again, hopefully, is one of the things that you can do in Teams, which you can't do, you can just about do in Zoom if you've switched on the advanced chat, is what you can do is you can respond to somebody's chat comment. So if you see what Mike's done is he shared a piece of text for you in chat, what you should be able to do is move your mouse over the top of that and give it a thumbs up, a heart, a shocked face, whatever it is that you want to do. That's a way of reacting to what he said. Now, Zoom, as I say, has got this in their advanced chat now. And I think Adobe Connect, it's either just about to come out or they're working on it. I can't remember where it is now. I think it's really good fun to be able to do that. It's also really useful. So in chat, or you can click that hand up if you prefer to unmute, how do you use that feature if you do? Or how might you, how could you use that feature in your virtual training sessions? So type away in chat, please. Or of course, if you can't type in chat or have any other challenges, you are welcome to click the hand up and we'll get you unmuted. So how is it that you do use this lovely little feature, or could use that lovely little feature? There's a couple of you that were unmuted, and I've just muted you just to keep the recording nice and clear. It also saves bandwidth when we're muted, when we're not talking. So we could use it as an emoji check-in. Great. I don't know if it's Dana or Dana. And I love that for kind of like, how are you feeling today? How are you feeling about this topic? Choose a smiley face. We can gauge how learners feel about the material presented for check-ins, simple voting without setting up a poll. Use it to know that participants are back from breaks, and similar to a yes, no, or use a smiley frown. Love all of those. We like using it for that voting thing. So, everybody share their ideas about topic X, and what should we talk about? Go and thumbs up them all, and the one with the most thumbs up, we'll talk about that one, or whatever it might be and how you want to use it. It's a really nice interactive way to be able to share those kind of answers. Fantastic. So what I'd also like to do is spend a little bit of time looking at the webcam options that we have in Teams, and also how we might use them in our training. So on the More menu at the top of Teams desktop, so if you're in the browser it's different, but if you're on the desktop application, you should be able to click on the More menu, and then you should be able to go and click on background effects, and then go and change stuff in your webcam. Now you might have this already if you've got any kind of virtual background, but you've got lots of different options there. This is really great for people who want to disguise that they're working from the bedroom or the kitchen at home, and it allows a certain amount of personal privacy. One of the issues we had sort of during COVID was, well, where does my personal space end and my kind of open public space at work start? And that can cause anxiety for people and stuff. So it can also be used where maybe the marketing department has set something up with corporate branding. So if you look at Lindsay's background, absolutely really good, perfect example. Thank you very much with what's going on there. So again, let's jump into chat. Thinking about your organizations, doesn't matter whether it's Teams, Zoom or anything else. What do your attendees or your trainers do for their video backgrounds already? And is there actually a policy? Some organizations are having policies with regards backgrounds for webcams now. So in chat, what are you thinking? Tell me a little bit about what your people, i.e. your clients, your trainees, or your teams do with regards backgrounds for webcams. And are there any policies in where you work? So again, if you can't type, you can just click that raise hand icon. I'd love to hear from you on audio. It doesn't have to be just me talking. Bob says there is no policy, but we should have one. That's a lot of people, I think, are probably thinking the same way as you, Bob. Alan says, love the blur background because my office is in the middle of a transition at the moment. We don't need your excuses, Alan. But you're right about having that kind of that option just to say, I don't want you to see what's there for some reason. Internal training is not required to use a branded background, says El Rotondo. Thank you. And you don't have to. It can be a little bit tricky to get it set up right, and is it round the right way? So that's a really difficult one, because sometimes in Teams it looks wrong to us but right to other people. Sean says no policy but recommended clean background or blur or virtual background. And that clean background is quite important. I mean, my background isn't clean in the sense of being empty, but it's clean in the sense of being physically clean. So we like sharing our actual spaces, says Christopher, to convey some personality. Sometimes I blur it so it doesn't become distracting. And that can be really important. But that little bit of personality, I think it can be really important for connections, depending on who you're meeting with. And Kelly says, we have branded backgrounds and speciality backgrounds for seasonal events. Kelly, I am loving that. I've got a Santa hat that I wear sometimes. I don't know if that's the same thing. And Dana says we no opportunity available are really important. So I want to turn now to some research that we did recently. We launched this last year. We teamed up with Jane Daly at PeopleStar, and we researched from learners themselves more about their experiences around live online learning. Now, we had over 100 people respond to the survey in the UK and the US predominantly, and the report is available for download on virtualresearchinsights.com. I thought it was actually kind of very telling that there was a large majority that liked seeing the facilitator on the webcam, but only when it was appropriate. Less people wanted the webcam on throughout the whole session. What surprised me a little, I'll be really honest, was how few people say that they didn't want it on at all because it was a distraction or they had bandwidth issues. Though we still have to be aware that this is true for some people. It can cause anxiety and cause other issues as well. So this point about have the webcam on, but at the appropriate time. When is that appropriate time for the facilitator to use their webcam? So let's get some of you on audio at this point. I've done more than enough talking. So who would like to volunteer? Just click that raise hand icon, that hand up. When is it an appropriate time for the facilitator to use their webcam? You can use chat as well. Shannon, please unmute. Go ahead. What you're thinking.
Hi, I was just thinking when you're introducing yourself to everybody, that would be a really good time.
Yeah. Christopher had said about that kind of personality part. I remember years ago, way before COVID, attending an all-day virtual conference, and we had loads of audio, loads of chat, loads of interactions, suitable breaks. It was fantastic, but nobody had come on webcam at all. And I felt like I hadn't seen a person all day. So Shannon, I think that's a really great point. Who else would like to come on audio and share another idea about when it's appropriate for the facilitator to use their webcam? Just click that raise hand icon. Oh, is this the bit like face-to-face where everybody just starts avoiding my gaze? Tracy, you've saved everybody. Thank you very much. What do you think?
Well, I think it also depends on the length of the facilitation. We don't do more on Zoom or on Teams for more than 90 minutes to 120, and I am on screen all the time. I think it's important that they can at least see me, and we ask people to be on camera as much as possible. And if they have trouble because of connections or various reasons, please come on when they're speaking.
Yes.
And part of that is just, we are a distributed team. We want to be able to see them. And it's also that balance check. They see that I'm listening to them and I'm not distracted. And hopefully I can see that they are not distracted. And it brings us together. And we do a lot of hybrid work. So.
Love that, Tracy. Thank you. Because you get that non-verbal feedback, the smile, the nod. You don't sort of see me kind of going, okay, it must do something else. You don't get that distraction, or on your phone. Thank you, Tracy. I couldn't find my phone. So I got my aircon control, which wasn't quite the same thing. But so thank you, Tracy. I think you make a great point about, fine, don't have your webcam on, but maybe put it on if you can when you're speaking. That's a great point. Now, Joanne, you had put your hand up, but I'm assuming Tracy had said whatever your point was, but if you wanted to add something, you're more than welcome to. Thank you very much for your answers there. Oh, Lindsay, please go ahead.
Yeah, so this is just a little bit different. So I used to work with the deaf community. So a lot of my staff members were deaf or hard of hearing. And so we were using American Sign Language and had to be on all the time. But moving outside that setting, hearing loss is a low incident disability, so you may not know who has a hearing loss, but just like you said, all of those visual cues are really important. So I think especially when you're facilitating discussion, being able for people to see you, potentially read your facial cues is important as well.
Yeah, and maybe lip reading can go along with that as well, which is nice. Thank you for adding that. Something that a lot of our platforms are doing, including Teams, is you can put the spotlight on one person or pin one camera, which is really nice. So it could be your person who's doing the sign language has that camera pinned so that people can see that really easily. And a lot of the software these days also gives quite a lot of control to the user. So I can decide, where do I want the webcams? Who do I want to show up most? So those kind of exploring as well. Thank you. And I think kind of this actually brings me really on nicely, Lindsay, to my next topic around some of the meeting options. There are loads of meeting options. There's loads of things. I could do a whole hour just on meeting options. I'm not going to. It would bore you, I promise. I did want to look at just a couple of things, though. So again, if you go up to the More menu and you go to Settings, you'll have meeting options. And depending on your license, depending upon your role in the organization, you'll have different options and different things here. But I just wanted to highlight that this opens up a panel on the right and it gives you control who waits in the lobby, like today, who can present in a session, who has microphone rights, and so on. And it's definitely worth checking that before you do any of your sessions to make sure that you can set up how you want to. And in an ideal situation, you check that the morning before, the day before, so that you've got everything set up in your account. Otherwise, you might need to speak to the IT department, whoever kind of controls that for you. Also on that More button in Teams is another menu, which is accessibility. So going to Lindsay's point around this accessibility, you should be able to click that now in your own software and actually turn on captions in the meeting if you want to. So again, everything is different. I always hesitate to say, try this now, it will work, because it doesn't for everyone in Teams especially. But you might be able to try that now. And it should turn on captions in the meeting, but only for you. So it's not like I'm turning it on for everyone, because I don't know about you, but I get distracted and just kind of read them. But have you used this? Who might this help in your session? So Lindsay's already highlighted really brilliantly, perhaps people who are deaf or have a loss of hearing of some description. But in chat, who might this help for you in your organization, your clients, to be able to turn those captions on? And it's a relatively newer feature. Even a few years ago, it wasn't as good as what we have now. And Lindsay, you've probably got far more experience of this than I do, but I think it's a really great thing to use. Alan, please go ahead and unmute. It'd be lovely to hear from you.
Hi, I use captions personally just so it helps keep me on track. I tend to wander around. I got 4 screens up and I was testing how this would look on PC and on Chrome and on a Mac. So I'm like doing all the things back here. But if captions are on, I'm more likely to stay focused on the content and the presenter.
Love that. I love that. And you're not alone with multiple screens. There are people who are neurodiverse. Even just kind of your average everyday person, we've got more work than we have time. The nice thing about captions is often it gives you like the whole sentence. So you might kind of go, what did she say? And you can quickly read back that sentence, whereas you can't kind of play that back on audio. So that's a great point, Alan. Thank you for sharing. And I'd be interested to see your report on what you've discovered a little bit later on. Sean says in chat, it helps if a session is recorded and you can watch it at increased speed. Love that, Sean. And Angel says, when we have global meetings, it can help if you need help with the different accents. Love that. Although sometimes depending on your accent, it can put the word up different, which is weird. Also, I love this about Teams. If you use a swear word, it puts little asterisks in, or sometimes it'll put an angry face and things like that. I am not going to test that now. I will let you have the joy of testing that another day. But I really did have a session once where we just sat there using swear words and making things up. It was great fun. Okay. So something that's a little bit annoying compared to other platforms is that you can't see the people panel and the chat panel at the same time. So click that raise hand if you've used Zoom or WebEx or, you know, maybe Adobe Connect, other things like that. So click that hand up, that raise hand, if you used other platforms other than Teams. Quite a few of you have. Thank you very much. You can click that down now, get that out of the way. So in most of those other platforms, you have like a people or participants panel where you can see hands up, green check marks, that kind of thing, and a chat panel that's separate. Now in Teams, you don't have that, which on the surface is really annoying. So when you do things like click the hand up icon, like you did just now, what happens is in the people panel, I get a little red circle and it shows me kind of how many people have done that. And Mike often does this at this point just to show, so you can go and have a little look. Now that just means what I can do is go to that people panel and see that. But it kind of depends, because it does show up over your video, or over, if you're seeing lots of videos, not everybody's got their webcam on, so you might see people's initials. Or if I turn my camera off, you should, no, you're not seeing my picture. Depends again on which system you're logged into, but you will see the hands up icon or any of the other reactions. You've got the reaction buttons at the top of the screen for the heart, the thumbs up, that comes up over the initials or the names as well. Also, what you can get as the host, as the person presenting, is you can usually see who was the first person to have done that. Joanne, not for you. Again, it's different for lots of people. I'm sorry about that today, but this is how it could be depending upon what you've got set up. One of the other things you should be able to do, especially if you're running Teams desktop app and you're the person who's hosted the meeting or set it up, is that you can actually lower people's hands for them. So you just go to the people panel, find the person, usually people with their hand up go to the top of the list, which is really handy. Click the three dots and you can lower their hand for them. It is much easier if you do what I did at the beginning, which is basically train people to do it themselves, then I don't have to do it for you. But also you'll notice on this menu, this is where the pin is. So this would be useful for maybe the person doing the American Sign Language, where you can pin a video just for me, or you can spotlight it for everyone. You can also do things like remove someone from a meeting if they're being a little bit of a naughty student and stuff like that. And what I'd also like to have a look at now, I think this is a really important topic, is screen sharing within Teams. This actually works in Zoom as well, or any other system where you are sharing your screen as opposed to uploading your slides. So Adobe Connect and WebEx, typically in the past, you would have uploaded your slides into it, but I'm talking about sharing our screen. So what we found is that if people are using webcams, which they're doing much more these days, it can really help us connect with each other. And just seeing those nods and those smiles and the rolling eyes at my bad jokes, all of those things are fantastic. But it highlights an issue about being able to see people and their reactions and chat whilst we're screen sharing. So is this a problem that you've had, that maybe you're sharing your screen and it could be PowerPoint, it could be a system, and then you're like, oh, well, I can't see people's webcams anymore and I can't see chat. So have you had that, and what kind of challenges does it give you if you have? So let's use chat for this one. So have you had that problem where you're screen sharing, and it could be Teams, could be Zoom, something else, and all of a sudden you can't see people's webcams and you actually can't see chat either? So Josh is making a really great point in chat that some of the features that I'm talking about today aren't switched on in the license that we're using, but they will be in other systems. And as I say, it's really important you check ahead of time and you liaise with IT, especially in a bigger organisation. Things like the whiteboards will need to be switched on by IT in the background. It's actually a very complicated process. It's not just click, you've got whiteboards. So you will have to check those things out ahead of time. And Christopher says, if you're getting people to respond via audio, the newest update will lower hands automatically after people have spoken. That is helpful, Christopher. Thank you. So I'm not seeing anybody saying that they've had challenges with this. We certainly hear a lot of people do this. Oh, Liz, I think is going to come back to this. We'll come back to chat in a moment, Liz, I promise. So we found that if you do have these problems or these challenges, the easiest way to deal with this is for your screen share to actually be in a smaller window on your screen rather than full screen. And it means that you can set up different parts of your computer screen, how you want them, where you want them, whatever size might be right for you and the monitors that you have. So this is an example exactly what I'm doing in Teams right now. So what I've got on the right-hand side of my screen is my facilitator guide, my training notes, and I've got that set up right now. And on the left side of my screen, I've got my PowerPoint at the bottom left, and that's what I'm screen sharing for you to see. And above that, I have Teams, and that still allows me to see the webcam and the chat. And the reason this works is I've got this in a window. So if you were doing Word or something, you just restore it to a window. This works on a Mac as well. And I just want to share with you the instructions for this are in the link that Mike has shared in chat on the lightbulbmoment.community. But I just wanted to highlight this to you in case you've never seen it before. So one thing you can do in PowerPoint is if you go to the slideshow menu and click set up slideshow, there's a whole load of options. But the one I'm interested in here is browsed by an individual in a window. What that means is when you run your presentation, when you press F5 or click that little kind of presentation icon, it will run in the window whatever size you set it up in. And I find that really good for Zoom and Teams and that kind of thing, because it allows me to put that on the screen along with a notepad document or, you know, my producer notes if I'm working solo today, whatever it might be. So let me pause there and ask what thoughts or questions you have on this. It kind of brings us into monitor size and multiple monitors and stuff like that as well. So what thoughts or questions do you have at this point? Josh, go ahead.
So given what you just laid out there, what I'm wondering is I do a lot of my work within PowerPoint with leader notes embedded in them, and so using presentation mode. But I'm wondering then if you can just share like just what comes up within presentation mode, or you still need an extra, because I think this is what you're hitting on now is one of my biggest challenges, and maybe for others too, of trying to, I had it down in Zoom. I could see my people and do stuff and move things around, and I don't even know how to configure my screen for this. So this is a great start on that. But if your leader notes are embedded, do you have a solution on that too, or?
Yeah, if you go to that link that Mike shared with the instructions in it, what I do is as I find stuff about this topic, because it's not just one way of doing things, obviously, I've got some other stuff in there, like if you're using presenter view and stuff like that, because things like presenter view will be dependent on do you have two monitors or not. So if you have two monitors, actually that can be really easy. Because you say, well, okay, put my slides here and I'll share that window in Teams, and put my presenter notes here on the other screen, maybe the laptop screen, for example, and I'll look at those there. And that can work really nicely. But if you only got one monitor, even if it's a giant monitor, you have to do a workaround, because presenter view was designed for when you're presenting at a conference. So the idea is you plug your laptop into the big screen, the slides are on the big screen, your notes are on the laptop in front of you, or some version of that. So yeah, in that link that Mike has shared on the lightbulbmoment.community, then it's got bits and pieces in there about how to go and do that if you use PowerPoint in different ways. And there's some workarounds in that as well. Alan's sharing in chat that if you have an iPad, you can turn that into a second monitor, which also works with Mac OS. But you will need to get a program to make it work with Windows. It's called Duet Display. Is one that he's recommending. If you've got three screens, then that's great. Not everybody does. Some people are just working off a laptop screen. So if you're just working off your 15-inch laptop screen, then you probably don't want to do what I'm sharing. But maybe you still want to have your PowerPoint in a window. Maybe you have your leader notes printed out. But also what you could do is you could use a second device to be able to see people's webcams. So the second device is really, really important. I've got that set up today. So if I look over to my right, I can see my laptop. It's just my old laptop. It gives me a backup. So if my computer crashes, then I can jump onto that laptop and at least say, give me a second, I'll be back with you. But more importantly, when I share my slides, I can just glance over really quickly, a bit like looking in your rearview mirror when you're driving, and I can see my PowerPoint sharing. I don't have to do that awful thing of, can you all see my slides? You know, that's really annoying. So it just allows that option. And then every now and then, if something's a bit weird, I can look over and go, there's stuff there that wasn't on my screen, or something's broken here, or whatever it might be. It gives me a comfort factor and a backup. So therefore, you might have an old laptop you could use. It might just be an old mobile phone. And even just setting that up and literally propping it on your desk and allowing you to see a few webcams or see the attendee views, so you can glance and go, yep, PowerPoint shared. Something like that can be really useful too. I'm still talking for ages. What other questions or comments do you have about the kind of screen layout, screen sharing, monitor setup stuff? So you can click your hand up if you'd like to speak, or you can use chat. Alan has a question to the group. How many screens are you using at the moment? So let's let Alan know in there. You can have a little bit of a chat about that. One of my biggest recommendations for any digital work, to be honest, but especially for any virtual work, is the more screen real estate you can get, the better. Now, you're going to be limited by space. You're going to be limited by cost as well. I know that. And it's not always the easiest thing to go, yeah, okay, I'll go and get a 50-inch screen or something like that. But the bigger, the more you can get, the better. And Alan, I think, did Alan say he had 4 screens? I mean, that's even more than me. So if you can do that, it's great. But it's also about making the most of what you've got. And Joanne says, I've always got my backup computer logged into my events. Fantastic. So we'll leave you to kind of go and explore and play and find the best way to do that. Christopher says, when I present, I do what Joe recommends. My personal PC becomes my attendee device. Love that. And Alan says he's got 2 old devices for viewing. It's really, really good to be able to do that. So bless you, Shannon. The last thing I want to talk about is having a look at the whiteboard. We love our whiteboard activities, and we do those on Live Online a lot because it's just like Post-it note activities and all that stuff. So we're going to explore what Teams has to offer us. So click that hand up icon, please, if you've used the Teams whiteboard in any kind of way live online. It could be in your training sessions, in a meeting you've attended, whatever. So click the hand up icon if you've used the Teams whiteboard in any way, shape or form. If you haven't used it, no need to click. Quite a few if you have. Okay. So if you have used it, what do you think of it? Let's use chat. If you have used the Teams whiteboard, what do you think of it? So good, bad or ugly, whichever one it is. So in chat, please, if you have used the Teams whiteboard, what do you think of it? So what have we got? Angel says, we used it for party games for a holiday party. It was fun. Lovely, Angel. That's where the creativity comes in. Christopher says, meh. Like Teams is getting better every day. That is true, Christopher. Alan says it's okay. Haven't used it in a while. We'll need to check it out again. Fair enough. Angel says, I know it was also used in my organisation for process excellence collaborations. And that's kind of what it's there for, which is really, really great. So with regards to that, what Teams Whiteboard offers are some really great content options. And El Rotondo says, used it to organise virtual stickies. It's really great for that because you can use virtual stickies or Post-it notes. You can put text on it. You can do drawing stuff on it. You can add images and all sorts of other stuff. Now, we love the whole Post-it notes on the wall kind of activities that are face-to-face, and you can do versions of that live online. Now, Teams Whiteboards also gives you a reactions option, which is great for basically stickers you're adding to the whiteboard for the dot voting or any kind of voting kind of options that you might want to do in your training or in any of your collaboration. One pretty cool thing about the Teams whiteboard is it's huge. So this means that actually you can zoom right out and you've got tons and tons of space. How might you use that feature for your activity? So in chat, or click the hand up if you'd like to speak. So if you've used Teams whiteboards, have you used the fact that it's huge? Or if you haven't done it before, how might you use it? So in chat, or click the hand up icon if you'd like to speak. I think someone's unmuted. If you want to speak, go ahead. Is that Narissa? Narissa, if you didn't mean to unmute, that's absolutely fine. It's no problem at all. So how might we use this? Shannon says, have participants type in responses. Yep, absolutely. Lindsay says, I haven't in Teams, but in Miro has a similar feature and we can add various activities to different areas on the whiteboard. Loving that, Lindsay. And I think that's that key feature. We have to be a little bit careful with it because we can get lost. Angel, did you want to add something on audio? Angel, you had your hand up. Maybe I need to unmute you, Angel, because I think
I was
got
muted
it.
on mine. So we didn't do this activity in Teams. We did it on a different whiteboard application, but it would apply here that we had people brainstorm ideas on the stickies. And then we had a second activity where the people moved the stickies into categories. And then the third activity was voting to upvote which items we would work on from those categories.
Yeah, loving that idea. Thank you very much, Angel. Christopher says for a breakout, we present panels for each group so that there's like a space for everyone. Fantastic. Alan says you can create stations in the whiteboard that you can move participants from one space to another. Brilliant. And Michelle says, I've not used it, but thinking it could be used for varied activities. Brilliant work, everyone. And I think that kind of different spaces for different people, a bit like Mural or Miro, or maybe building up your activities can be really good fun and a really good use of this feature. Now, with Teams whiteboards, we never used to be able to get guests outside of your team to use it. So inside your team, if you were working collaboratively, great, go ahead, great fun, use for all those things you've just said. But then we would come along to an organisation and we train their team of people. They send us a Teams invite. And because we're a guest outside of @company.com, we can't use the whiteboard. Now that has changed. That has opened up. That's available now. But like I mentioned earlier on, IT need to turn that on. And I looked into this and I did it for my own team setup. It was not easy. I mean, maybe Alan and Christopher would be able to manage it, but it took a lot of fettling from me, quite frankly. It was a proper IT job going into like the command structure and everything. I did not like playing with that. My point being, it's not an easy switch on. So you definitely need to speak to IT. You definitely need to test it if you want to use it outside of your organization. And again, that's because Teams isn't just one thing like Zoom. It's integrated into so many things. A lot of the other platforms are going that way as well, but Teams is more so than those other platforms. So there's some pretty cool things you can do with the whiteboards and the activities. You can prepare them ahead of time, which is really important, a bit like you can with Adobe Connect. You can't do that so well in other platforms. Adobe Connect you can. You can save them in your OneDrive. So if your organization's using that or SharePoint, whatever the underlying structure is, you can reuse those whiteboards in other classes, meetings or projects. You can collaborate across your Teams channels if you're using that within your organization for collaborating that way. But as I say, speak to IT and get that switched on. And Alan says you didn't know about the OneDrive save and reuse. Yeah, it's really great, Alan. But again, test it. Always test it. Test. Now, Teams doesn't always have the most stable reputation with regards to the whiteboard. I think it's got a lot better recently. I haven't had so many people groaning about it. But the creativity that's within it, the idea of it, I think is absolutely brilliant. If you can get use of it and it's stable, then that would be absolutely fantastic. Oh, we've been through quite a lot. So I have got one more question for you before I will answer any questions that you have, or at least attempt to answer them. So what I'd like to know from you, first of all, please, is what is your learning reflection from today? We've had a whistle-stop tour of Teams, but let's use chat. What is your learning reflection from today's session? Now, I know some people are much deeper thinkers, prefer to go and actually think about these things in a little bit more time, and maybe whilst you're driving home or at the weekend. What's your initial thoughts bubbling up? What have you learned today? Teams does a lot more than I realised. It's made me aware of the possibilities. The whiteboard is versatile. Teams requires more pre-planning for a session than what we're used to with a quick Zoom. To be fair, once it's set up and you know most of it, then it will be a bit more like that. But certainly when you're newer to it, it can feel that way. Teams can do a lot more than we thought. You need to be agile. You don't know the setup of the people who are joining your sessions. That's really good. And be prepared to provide other options. There are options for interactivity with learners. The panels was really helpful information, and a trick to use a single screen, but creative ways to add new screens, such as old phones, or as Alan mentioned, the iPad and so on. Love the whiteboard, looks better than what I currently have. And I think also there are other apps that you can put in with Teams as well. So there's an advanced whiteboard and stuff, which I didn't want to get into today, but there is some other stuff there as well. Still not sure the challenges presented are worth the work. Completely understand that. If you've got the option to use another tool, to be honest, I probably would. I'd use Zoom or Adobe Connect over Teams any day of the week given a choice. But the point is, we don't always have a choice. So therefore, we've got to use what we've got and make the most of it. And switching from Zoom to Teams for virtual facilitation, says Alan, loving the content, can begin implementing new ideas immediately. Thank you very much indeed. And Joanne was clarifying for Teams versus other platforms. Understand, Joanne. So thank you very much for all of your time today. We've got about, 5 or 6 minutes, I think, Josh, for any questions. So if you have questions, please pop them in chat or click that hand up. I would be more than happy to try and answer them for you. So about all things live online learning, design, delivery, different platforms, stuff about Teams. Josh says, how are breakouts different, better or worse than in Zoom? Good question, Josh. Zoom is better, is the short version. I find they are more stable. They're easier to use. Certainly one of the challenges with Teams historically is that if you've set up the team meeting and I want to run the breakout rooms, I can't. Now that is changing. Teams has now got a co-organizer option, but it's in public beta at the moment. So again, IT would need to switch that on for you. So you would need to go and find whoever controls your account to do that. So is there anything else about it that's better or worse? I think it's got all the standard options, send a message, broadcast to the group and so on. I think it's just a bit smoother in Zoom at the moment. You can still assign people randomly. You can move people around. I think Zoom, I might be wrong about this. Zoom has definitely got the auto select option. So you could set up a number of breakout rooms, project 1, 2, 3, whatever it might be, and people can choose which breakout room to go into. I'm 95% sure there isn't that option in Teams at the moment. So that's better in Zoom, and Adobe Connect can do that as well. Any other questions? Oh, Christopher said, oof, Josh, buckle up. Yeah. I think that as an external trainer to people's Teams account, the lack of control over the breakouts is appalling. So we have to ask a host from our client to run the breakout that we can't end early, we can't give them an extra minute, I can't go into the breakout rooms and out of them to check it. It's horrific in that sense. But if you are the host and can control it, that's a different matter. Okay, El Rotondo says this has been great. Thank you. I'll see you another day. Yes, Alan, thank you. The meeting owner will also need to allow you to create breakout rooms. Joanne says Teams is great for meetings and internal training, but I would use another platform. Anything else? I agree with you, Joanne. Even internal training, I'd probably use another platform, but it is good internally versus externally. Christopher says there's a delay in moving to breakouts in Zoom. It's really laggy, but once you're in a breakout, it isn't so bad. Yeah, it does take a moment to set that up for you. Okay, so what Mike is sharing in chat is a link into our lightbulbmoment.community. It's a free community about all things virtual learning, so you can join that if you want to. The particular link that Mike is sharing is resources to help you start delivering live online learning. It's a whole ton of our curated resources put into different categories that might help you out. If you want to go to lightbulbmoment.info, we've got a blog there, tons of free resources, and you can also find out about the courses that we can run to deliver to your training teams if you need to. So I think that's about it from me, Josh. I'm going to hand back over to you and say thank you to Mike for producing, to Lindsay for producing, to everybody for attending and your great questions and collaboration today. And thank you again, Josh, for inviting us.
Yes, thank you for coming again. I appreciate it. And Mike, for the all the things you're putting into chat as well. Appreciate it. Yeah, and I would definitely encourage everybody listening to this to go sign up for Joe's community. I'm in it. I get the messages, and I've learned some things from there as well. So good place to be. And I hopefully I think we've all learned some interesting things today, right? You know. It seems that my overall assessment is that Teams, those of us who are using it are by necessity rather than choice potentially. So hopefully this is giving us a little bit more comfort with all of that. But again, thank you all for attending and making our first Lunch and Learn in a while successful. And again, check out our other upcoming events and look forward to seeing everybody else again soon.